Please be seated. Shabbat Shalom. So it is my particular pleasure to introduce our Darshanit this morning. She's come a long way to be here. She lives in England. Her name is Judith Silver. What can I tell you about Judith? I can tell you that she is a choir director. She runs 2 choirs in England. I can tell you that she's been connected with Jewish music as a singer and as a songwriter for probably the best part of the last 15 years. I can tell you that she's part of a groundbreaking project in London called Singing for the Brain, which is a joint project with the St. John's Wood Liberal Synagogue that opens its doors for people with Alzheimer's and their carers to come together so as to be able to benefit from the therapy that music provides. And there are few things more moving than seeing somebody who has been trapped in the prison of dementia, having been unable to speak for perhaps many years, being able to turn to their partner and sing to them. And that is a moment that I have seen Judith facilitate. She also happens to be my sister. And she is going to begin what is a rather unusual sermon with the quartet. If you come to services in the auditorium on the High Holy Days, you will have heard the quartet sing. But if you do not, it may be new to you. So let me introduce and call down Sandy Samuels, bass, Seth Samuels, tenor, Lisa Spiegel, soprano, altos, 3 today, cantor Judy Dubin-Aronoff, my sister Judith, and me. Today we are a sextet, and we're going to sing Judith's arrangement of Oseh Shalom. Watch out for the candy, guys. Yeah, there's a lot of candy.
He's our pitch pipe.
Now is a time for compassion. Now is a time for truth. Now is a time for faith. Now is a time for forgiving. Now is a time for letting go. Now is a time for trust. Now is a time for compassion. Now is the time for truth. Now is the time for faith. Now is the time for forgiving. Now is the time for letting go. Now is the time for trust. Now is the time for compassion. Now is the time for truth. Now is the time for faith. Now is the time for forgiving. Now is the time for letting go.
Switch on.
What a blessing to be here today with you. Thank you all for being here. I have to speak louder. I seem to be double microphoned. That's a good sign. I would like to tell you a tiny bit more than my sister told you about the work that I do. I'm lucky enough to direct 2 choirs. I work within and outside the Jewish community. I'm very influenced by the music of the world as well as the Jewish world. I've been more and more immersed in the Jewish community over the last 15 years. I became a full-time musician 20 years ago, and it's the Jewish community that has opened its arms and its heart to my music in a way that is very, very moving to me, and I'm so full of gratitude. So you may have heard and understood from the Oseh Shalom that we sang just now, that for me, songwriting, creating settings for music, for liturgy, is one of my ways that I get to connect with prayer. And I want to share a little bit of that process with you today. And I also would love to invite you to see how that works for you in practice. So at the end of my Oseh Shalom, I have covered the Hebrew text. I've covered the English translation, some version of those words. May the bringer, may the maker of peace bring peace upon us and the whole world. And for me, as I was songwriting, I realized the song was not finished for me. And I realized there was something else that was going to happen. And what flows, I call it an unfolding or an unlocking of the text. And what I thought I would love to share with you today is some of that process of unfolding or unlocking the text. Because I feel, as my sister has described to me, that she's described to you, sometimes the text can feel so fixed. We look in the prayer book and the words don't change. And she's given me a beautiful analogy to share with you, which is as if in one of those old films they used to make, and the actors are sitting in the car, and behind them you can see the landscape moving, and the car is static. And we can think of the prayer as that static car, but our lives are moving. So every time we encounter the prayer, it feels different to us. So my Oseh Shalom finishes with a chant that says, now is a time for trust. Now is a time for compassion. Now is a time for truth. Now is a time for faith. Now is a time for forgiving. Now is a time for letting go. And on the day or the days that that song was being created through me, those were the words that came attached to the prayer Oseh Shalom. So I'd like to give you a couple more examples of that process as it has happened for me, and then I would like to invite you to share a little bit of that process. My kippah really doesn't want to stay on my head. Forgive me. Okay, so I have written a setting for Gesher Tsar Me'od. You will probably know the words, Kol ha'olam kulo Gesher Tsar Me'od. The world is a very narrow bridge. And the most important thing is not to be afraid. So my version goes, Kol ha'olam kulo Gesher Tsar Me'od. Feel free to click. Ve'ha'ikar lo לפחד כלל, כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, והעיקר Lo lefach et klal. So that came first, and that's the Hebrew. And then we get the English, which goes, all the world is a very narrow bridge, but the most important thing is not to be afraid. We get to hear that. All the world is a very narrow bridge. That's the end of the text. And for me, again, it just didn't feel finished. And as a songwriter, I thought, okay, maybe I'm allowed to take that further then. What came to me next was a little bit more, which said, to my left and to my right, the jaws of the abyss. I'm imagining myself moving across that bridge, and there's this gaping mouth full of teeth, just waiting to swallow me up. I say, thank you, Rabbi, thank you for telling me not to be afraid, but it's all very well saying, don't be afraid. I'm still afraid. What do I do with that? So my text goes, to my left and to my right, the jaws of the abyss. By its twinkling teeth, I chart my course, fear singing in my ears. To my left and to my right, the jaws of the abyss. By its twinkling teeth, I chart my course, fear singing in my ears. And in the song that I wrote, those pieces are intertwined. You can sing them all at the same time. They build. Then there's a moment in the song that says, how can I be safe on a narrow bridge? How can I be strong till the day I die? That's my question. Thank you, Rabbi. You said not to be afraid. I am afraid. What am I going to do? How can I feel safe on a narrow bridge? How can I live my life in that way? Then I gave my answer in song. That's what came to me, which was, don't look down, keep going, don't look down, keep growing, don't look down, keep moving. That was my answer on that day to that question, and I was able to weave it into a song. What I would love to do is invite you to think about that process and perhaps experience it a little bit with me. I'm going to ask you if you would take your prayer book, just open it completely at random. Let your eye fall on a word or a sentence or a little paragraph, and give yourself a moment to engage with that, wherever it falls first. A little piece of text. I'm going to ask you these questions. If you were about to write a song with that little piece of text as your piece of text, would you use the whole text exactly as you see it in the prayer book? Would you select a small part of it because that's the part that resonates for you? Would you leave the rest? Would you add something of yourself on this very day that you bring yourself as you are right now to this prayer? What would your moving landscape be behind the fixed words of this prayer? What comes to you? Does anything come to you? And my last question is, do the words that you've hit upon resonate for you? It may just be that randomly opening the book, the words you found weren't the words for you today. Let me leave you with that just for 30 seconds, just with your book and your thoughts. You don't only need 30 seconds for that. You could spend the rest of your life doing that exercise. It's a really lovely thing to do. I want to just move forward and take you into the concluding part of what I wanted to share with you today. One of the things that I'm most passionate about is the idea of helping people to engage with their voice, their own personal, God-given voice. I lead choirs, I lead singing workshops, I work with voices all the time, as my sister told you. I work with people with dementia, and the singing voice can create miracles that somehow the spoken voice can't. So I would like to share with you that the 3 words I have perhaps heard most often during my life as a musician and singing facilitator, they're not "I love you," although I'm blessed to hear that quite often too, but my 3 words are "I can't sing." If I had a penny for every time I hear those 3 words, "I can't sing," I would be rather rich. All I want to say to you is usually when people say that, it means that when they were little, someone said, "Oh no, you don't sound very good. Shh, stand at the back, mouth the words." And from that moment on, perhaps they just didn't trust their voice anymore. And since then, maybe they're even in the synagogue just feeling like they can't sing out because, oh dear, it doesn't sound good. So usually, my experience is, all that means is sometimes it doesn't come easily to me to pitch the note correctly. That can be worked on. Sometimes it doesn't come easily to me to hold a rhythm. That can be worked on. Sometimes it doesn't come easily to me to hold a melody. That can be worked on. So I'm going to conclude today by asking you to do a tiny bit of singing with me, and if you can, possibly leave aside any of your own judgments about your own voice or anything that you've brought with you through your life about other people's judgments of your own voice. I'm going to ask you to sing 2 words with me. They're the Hebrew word for peace, shalom. They're the Arabic word for peace, salam. A lot of my work involves interfaith, intertwining between religions, between cultures, between people. So this is a prayer that I set a few years ago. And the prayer is the one that says, Adonai yishmor tzetecha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam. May God watch over you in your going out and your coming in, now and always. Very often I finish concerts like this and I get the audience to sing it. And it's very, very special to get a congregation singing it. So the Shalom Salams actually work in 2 parts. We'll see how that goes. And once you're singing, I'm going to just take the volume down and I'm going to sing the blessing to you. And that will be the end of my sharing with you today, although I hope we'll get to chat after the service. So we go like this. Shalom, salam, shalom, salam, shalom, salam, shalom. So I'm going to turn my mic off now. Shalom, salam, shalom, salam, shalom. Shalom, salam, this is the low part. Salam, shalom, salam, shalom, salam, shalom. So if anyone's got a lower voice, you can sing this. Shalom, salam, shalom, salam, shalom, salam, shalom, salam, shalom, salam. So you can keep singing that. We're going to do the blessing over it. Adonai yishmor tzetecha uvoecha. Adonai yishmor tzetecha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam, me'ata ve'ad olam. Adonai yishmor tzetecha uvoecha. Adonai yishmor tzetecha uvoecha מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם. שלום, סלם, שלום, סלם, שלום, סלם, שלום, סלם, שלום, סלם, שלום, סלם, שלום, סלם,